This story actually happened to me. I was 23 years old. It was night. I was working in a giant tire plant. The chief chemist at the time called us all in and said, "Go into the basement, start hauling these production records out and put them in the back of the semi they have parked out front. These records have to be taken to Chicago to go to court. They need them by dawn." So this is about 20 years before email, so we're having to physically haul these things out of the basement. So I'm in the back of the truck stacking these big boxes of cure cycle data, and that includes some of the big old round temperature chart recorders and all that kind of thing. Along with that, every skipped inspection, every ship anyway note, not to mention the police photos of the product failure investigations where there had been some overturned station wagon and there was a big investigation. The NHTSA was already involved. Firestone itself was toast. Eventually, they ended up laying off 60,000 workers and got bought out by a competitor. My job at that particular moment was try to keep the boss out of jail. The actual decisions on all this had been made about 10 layers higher than me, about 10 years previous to that, truth be known. Radial tires were invented back in the 1940s, and they hadn't really taken off commercially until the 70s. Firestone, for their own part, resisted the whole idea. If it had been a good idea, of course, they would have invented them. Firestone at the time was the long-term go-to supplier for Ford, and that went back all the way to the Model T era. So at the time I started, it was 1977, there was a crusty old process engineering manager that actually scoffed at the idea of radial tires. This guy was a piece of work anyway, and at the time he was younger than I am right now, which is kind of funny to think about. There was a TV commercial on at the time, produced by Goodyear, where there were a couple of people in lab coats in the back of a truck throwing big pieces of broken glass and jagged pieces of metal out of the back of a truck and having a car with radial tires run over it. And that planted in the public the whole idea of radial tires being a safety issue. But this guy called us all in and told us steel is no big deal and that our cheapest deluxe champ bias tires would do exactly the same thing. And of course, that's the very definition of hubris. Ford had decided and in fact insisted that the company start producing radial tires for all those late 1970s muscle cars. And of course, he's where he is now, and the deluxe champ is not around anymore either. But radial tires are still here, so that's the story. It's kind of an interesting story. In our case, the conversion was made with the existing equipment and in the cheapest way possible. And of course, along with that, there's the story of the 4 fatalities and the suicide that happened in the same plant. So it was kind of rough territory. So I'm now doing the ISO 9001, which is still about 15 years from being invented. What we're talking about here is Clause 753, which is document control. And I'm not ready to be convinced that it was a failure or a success, but it was what it was. We did have some production records. But the real failure, I think, in this case was 8.3, which was sending a product to market without validating the design. We won't get into Clause 8.6 at the moment, product release. This was more about culture than it was about anything else. So anyway, now it's now. You see that drill back there? I use it to build things that don't fall apart. That night I walked around and hauled evidence, and there were a lot of other stories to tell at that point. So let's not have you have that experience. I'm putting together a bundle of product quality resources to keep you out of the back of a truck. And I'm calling it the What Not to Say in an ISO Audit Survival Bundle. There's a corrective action template, an audit checklist, a lot of my most popular videos, and a few bonus rants. I do rant from time to time. It's a $197 bundle, full system, my rants, Slack access. Don't wait. Fix it today.